I hate that we're doing it this way, but I sure appreciate everyone's willingness to take the time to jump on another Zoom and be present and participate. So if you have any questions, please feel free to jump in and ask or use the chat, and I'll be monitoring that while others are presenting. We've got some great presentations today as we lead into this very unusual tourism day on the Hill. But I think once we go through it, you'll see that we've made some good adjustments in this pandemic era, and we'll still be very impactful with our legislators. So thank you again for your time here. And because there's so many of us, in the sake of time, we're not going to do introductions. But if anyone has any questions about who's this or something, let me know. And with that, I do want to take a moment because this is our first full membership meeting with our new executive director, Natalie Randall. I know a lot of you already know Natalie from her previous role in San Juan County and with the Utah Association of DMOs, but I want to turn the time over to Natalie for a second to introduce herself to everyone.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, everyone down in Monticello, Utah, southeastern Utah. One of the maybe silver linings of COVID is just being able to meet with everyone in this way, but I really miss seeing everyone in person and look forward for the opportunity to meet with everyone when the time is appropriate to do so again. Honored to be here with all of you. As Sarah said, prior to this role, I was the director for San Juan County's Economic Development and Visitor Services. And very excited to be able to extend all the hard work down in this corner of the state and to work through partnerships throughout the rest of the state with all of our membership, both in the public and private sector. There's so many positive things from our robust industry, but with that, we know hurdles come, particularly one that we are in the midst of right now. And with UTIA being that umbrella organization for Utah's visitor economy, I hope we can continue to collaborate as an industry and overall broader economic development in trying to unite our diverse segments and come together with a unified voice as a state moving forward. So looking forward to working with everyone, and I'm excited for this tourism day on the Hill. Thanks, Sarah.
Natalie got to, jump in with her mouth over the fire hose, of course, with it being the legislative session. Started, I think, the day you started or the day before. So she has definitely taken the bull by the horns. And so we appreciate all of her efforts so far, which you'll see here today too. So we will start off with minutes and financial updates. So I'll turn it over to Breck. But Natalie's going to share the minutes on the screen. They're pretty short, so we'll give everyone just a moment to review those before we ask for motion to approve.
Is that the end of them?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. And so if we could get a motion to approve the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
All right. Joan first, and I think, who's the second? Brian Merrill?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm honored to be here. Thank you everyone for the support, and Natalie, a warm welcome again. It's been great to have Natalie, and I'm looking forward to working with her, like Sarah said, because she started right when the session started. We have had not a whole lot of time to spend together working on all the financials. Obviously, as we know, it's been a rough year, but UTIA is in a really good place. We're really lucky with the education grant program for a hospitality program that helped us end the year in a good place. So right now, there's not a big financial update. We're in a good space, all things considering, and looking forward to a really good year. If you've lapsed on your membership, one thing that we were just going to talk about is obviously we understand, and if you can touch base with Natalie, check in with her on your membership. If you need some terms and stuff like that, reach out to us and we can work with you on that. We're really looking forward to, as soon as the session gets over. I know that Natalie not just got dunked into a session, but had immediate bills and things to work on. So that's where we're at. If you guys have any questions, let me know, let Natalie know, but looking forward to 2021 and beyond. Thank you.
Thanks, Breck. I'm going to jump back to the minutes for just 1 second and ask the membership if there are any corrections to those. And then if any are opposed to the motion to approve. Okay, we'll pass those. That's great. So with that, Vicki, I'm going to turn the time over to you for Utah Office of Tourism update.
Good morning, all. So great to see everyone, and can almost feel the possibility of being together, ideally out on a great hike together, but at minimum in some board meeting somewhere together. We got a little taste of in-person meeting at our last board meeting, and we're going to do hybrid again. So we hope you will join us either in real life or hybrid. I hope everyone can see my screen, my shared screen. Can you see the cover slide, tours on the path to recovery? Perhaps not.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm going to do a quick flyover for you of the headlines that we want to share with the legislature in our 12:30 session today. I know Sarah and Natalie have sent out the information, how you can tune in on Facebook. Such a complex story we have to tell this year. I thought it was kind of fun to reduce it to a math problem. If you're going down a river at 2 miles per hour and your raft loses a wheel, how much pancake mix would you need to reshingle your roof? That's the chaos that we've all been in. And just want to acknowledge that from the start. If you haven't gotten a chance to meet Dan Hemmert, he's a wonderful new director at GoEd. He's a grand adventurer. He's a whiz at finance, so he could probably even solve that math problem I just shared. And he's a great strategist. A couple of headlines for you to know here that I won't discuss with the legislature, but as I was telling a couple of people before the meeting started, in our first meeting, I said, hey, I'm getting ready to raft the Grand Canyon, and then I'm going to hike out on Bright Angel. It's about 9.3 miles. I thought that was a pretty good adventure. He said, oh yeah, I've done rim to rim to rim. So he tripled me in that first meeting. And now Sarah's doubling what I'm doing, but I'm still pretty happy that I'm hiking 9.3 miles out on Bright Angel Trail. Another headline about Dan is in an executive committee meeting the other day, he challenged our executive team to create a strategic plan as inspiring and as that will engage people to talk as enthusiastically about as we do the Red Emerald strategic plan. And that there isn't anything more meaningful to me because, after engaging with 400 people in 2019, we collectively created a strategic plan that I see everyone executing on all the time and in reorganizing our whole tourism economy around. And I'm just so pleased that we have this much unity of purpose. So our path to recovery, Please note, speaking of bold adventurers who put in a lot more miles on everything than I do, that would be our own Natalie Randall with the yellow backpack, part of a 250-mile, 5-day trip that she did with our visual asset manager and others, and captured just spectacular photos. So this is very familiar to everyone. We'll talk about the 2019 tourism economy of $10.1 billion, and that just a year ago we were celebrating that. And then this. I think this a chart from the Bureau of Labor Statistics captures as well as anything that we are the most devastated industry by any measure. And larger than many of these industries. Only construction is really thriving through the pandemic. I will acknowledge to them the remarkable contribution. And there is so much glass half empty, glass half full, because our recovery is so hard, but the legislature has done so much. And this is a hard one for all of us to see because we're experiencing it firsthand, but headlines, statewide transient room tax collections down 22%, but more than double that in Salt Lake County. And the other convention districts also suffering, but certainly one of our biggest contributors to TRT is the most depressed. So it hurts the whole state. The gist of the presentation is along these lines. It will take state investment and the Red Emerald strategy to position Utah as a national leader. We'll thank them for the CARES investments. As a reminder, $12 million to our office, and then another $1.5 million that we were able to pass along for a $2 million convention district incentive that I think has worked really well for the 8 convention districts around the state. And then a big shout out to them for the Shop in Utah grants, and to Corey Ann Edwards at the GoEd mothership that generated these Shop in Utah grants, which no matter how you measure it, our industry was the greatest beneficiary of these grants. I'll play for them our Small But Mighty ad. To many of them will not have seen this and want to make sure that they understand the good marketing that we're doing with sensitivity to people traveling when they feel ready to travel. We'll talk with them about how this is translated into really meaningful differentiation from other states. So Expedia hotel searches, you can see that Utah in orange has outperformed other Western states, particularly in those critical summer months when very little was happening. We were still getting hotel searches and hotel bookings. Here at the end, we're not able to identify which Western states these are, but you can see that one other Western state, think snow, has been able to outperform us just a little bit in the last month or so. This is really powerful story of their investment and how it has positioned us, to be losing the least among Western states. We're down 33% overall in travel spending. This is information from U.S. Travel and Tourism Economics. The Mountain West is down 42% and the U.S. is down 48%. I just had a little screen freeze. Sorry, guys. We'll highlight for them the ways that we have worked so hard to pivot and be creative. I've told many of you, I was raised in the public policy school that you never let a crisis go to waste. And we've had so many pivots, all based on the Red Emerald strategic plan of powerful branding, quality visitation, distributed visitation, and working with communities to enable community-led visitor readiness. If you don't know, I'm really proud to update you on an economic development and administration grant that we just received just a couple of weeks ago, $1 million. It's the largest grant that we've ever received, any funding infusion we've ever received beyond the state funding to Tourism Marketing Performance Fund. Big shout out to Flint Timmons, who led on this, Bianca, who helped him shepherd it along, and we'll use the money for Forever Mighty responsible visitation, help really engaging Utahns and potentially engaging regional visitors to be good stewards when they spend time on our public lands and in our communities. And then also helping destination marketing organizations with recovery planning and training. You'll hear more about this from Bianca and Flint. We have worked so hard to create a foundation of Forever Mighty storytelling. If you go to our website, please check out all the great Forever Mighty responsible visitation messaging. We've engaged with visitors at the height of this between March and July. Our team was having 120 intercom conversations every hour. Thanks to Rosie, to Diane on our team for all the leadership around this Forever Mighty visitor engagement. I also want to do a big shout out to Breck, who just took the initiative to create regional Forever Mighty storytelling. Vibrant worked with other hoteliers in the region so that there are more than 1,000 hotel rooms where visitors have that Forever Mighty responsible visitation challenge. Dispersing visitation, we'll do a huge shout out to the state parks. This visitation trend has continued for many years. It was exaggerated this year by the fact that the national parks were closed for a period through the pandemic. But it's also a huge tribute to the recreation infrastructure that they're creating. We're super excited that there could be $100 million that would go into outdoor recreation infrastructure at the state parks over the next year. And then another big shout out to the state parks, because they got 4 new certification for dark skies. Utah was the first dark sky designation ever established, and we've continued to lead. We now have 21. So this is really becoming a core part of our brand. Amazing storytelling that Anna on our team has been doing through publications, and we've also gotten great social media on it. Rachel on our team has organized a really powerful strategy for inspiring future international travel. Selena worked with Rachel to create a virtual walk across Utah. 1,000+ tour operators and riders have participated in having that virtual experience, all to inspire people toward future visitation. If you haven't heard about it, I'm super excited about a case study that Steve Nealman, and it's actually Steve's sister Julie, has done, that demonstrates that following the Red Emerald strategy is actually increasing their business profitability. The longer stays help them because there's less turnover of less work that has to be done to support the visitor. And then, of course, the visitors are getting out and hiring guides and outfitters and going to more restaurants, getting off the beaten path, and so forth. So we'll highlight that it's not just good stewardship, it's profitability. want to make sure that they know that we're supporting our guides and outfitters with a whole series of videos. Go with a guide. Yeah, this is also, so critical as part of our Forever Mighty strategy, that if you're with a guide, you significantly reduce the risk of physical harm, of having some of these very expensive life flight and search and rescue missions. So the nut of what we want to make sure that they understand from us is how much we value their state investment, how hard we're working to be good, responsible marketers, both at the state level and at the regional level. That the co-op program can't survive without that strong destination marketing operating budget, marketing budget that comes from TRT. All of these things can position us as leaders for long-term recovery. So the next steps I'll identify for them are our hard work to mitigate, to manage, and develop our destinations, our partnership with the Utah Association of Counties, with other state agencies, to be really thoughtful about ways of ensuring that the tourism economy is right by the local community. We'll emphasize the importance of the Tourism Marketing Performance Fund at the state level, and the TRT marketing funds at the local level. We'll talk about an employment training and retraining initiative that we're just beginning to work through. I'll tell all of you more about it as we get further into it, but we know that having enough employees is a challenge for many of you as you return to full operations. And so we're working with the Department of Workforce Services. We think that there will be some funding that will be available for training and retraining of our the whole range of workers that we need. Of course, a big variable in this is the J2 visa uncertainty about how many people will be able to come in on their J2 visas. And then I'll put in a plug that we do need another round of business grants. We understand that Senator Collamer is working on a bill. We're working really closely to make sure that the parameters of the bill enable so many of you to get the help that you need to survive. Again, Corianne Edwards at GoEd will be a key driver in making sure that this next round of business grants is focused on the businesses that need the money the most. I want to wrap up by sharing with all of you a little personal experience I had. We were all challenged in the last year to find new ways of getting through COVID, learning new things, exploring things that we may have always wanted to do. And so I've always wanted to learn to weld. I took a welding class. This is one of my classmates. We both worked on our bikes a little bit. It was actually fun. It was completely outside my comfort zone. And we got another screen freeze. So I did a lot of welding projects, did some Christmas gifts and a few other things, but I wanted to really make a statement, demonstrate how passionate I am about this place that I live. And so, maybe some of you have seen this monolith. It was a temporary placement. I'm looking for a place to put it. So if anyone has any ideas, I would welcome that. But I'm not the only one that's been having fun with the monolith. Just to get back to the real message that there are a lot more adventurous people out there than me, I want to show you our own Natalie Randall and how she has interacted with the monolith. So that's the gist of what I'll talk to them about today. And I want to be respectful of our time. I'm pleased to answer any quick questions. But you can see the gist of it is glass half empty, glass half full. Thank you for your part, legislature, in keeping the glass half full part.
Thank you so much, Vicki.
Sure.
Are there any questions for Vicki quickly? I can't see you all, so go ahead and just unmute yourself or you can raise your hand in the participant chat as well, or the participant list. Okay, well, we anticipate that if any questions arise, you will let us know, and Vicki, I know, will be happy to answer them. So, and it looks like Brian gets the prize for answering Vicki's question about how much pancake mix to patch her roof. Because I know all of our favorite word this year has been pivot. Tourism Day on the Hill is a pivot this year. And within that pivot, we're pivoting again at a last minute because we've all become so good at it. So just as an FYI, the Facebook live feed we were going to do of Vicki's presentation to the legislature, we've had some problems with our Facebook page. So Natalie hurried and set up a YouTube channel, and the link in the YouTube for the YouTube live feed was sent out in the UTIA email to membership last night. So you should have access to that. Because we all know, everything digital just goes smoothly and without hiccup or challenge all the time. But should we experience any hiccups or challenges with that feed on YouTube, it will be recorded and we will send it out to membership afterwards. So Natalie just posted that in the chat again as well. So thanks to Natalie for making that work quickly, and fingers crossed that all the electronics and technology work for us today. So with that, I'm excited to introduce Jennifer Lever. I know, Jennifer, we all look forward to hearing these updates from you each year, even though this year it's a little harder for us to hear the details. We always like to, it's always fun to hear about all the accomplishments across the state. But like Vicki said, glass half full. I think there have been numerous accomplishments across the state despite the challenges we're all facing. So we're excited to hear from you. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking about last time I came and spoke a year ago, and it was actually March 4th. And I remember bringing up this virus that was starting to circulate, and I didn't know what it was going to do to the tourism industry. And then 8 days later, we were told to go home. So it's just kind of putting in perspective, last time I saw you guys, it was like, there's this weird virus thing. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and just share a little bit of an update. Let's see if this works. I'm pretty sure there will be technical issues, but just bear with me. Okay, so I usually present our trifold, which looks at data from kind of the year before, because that's usually all we have. But this year, because of the COVID issues, I went ahead and put together sort of a hybrid showing the 2019, the really good numbers, but also showing some of the impacts of 2020. And this is a lot of information, and there will be a link to this on our website. So I've just pulled out a few figures to go over today. And this one is similar to the one that Vicki showed with visitor spending and sales and that type of thing. It's a little bit different. The gray lines show air passengers. You can see that, I don't know if you can see all the way through. It's a little bit cut off on my screen, but still not so great for air travel. As we know, most people switched to auto travel, car travel, and traveling more regionally, more locally in 2020. I just wanted to look a little bit at where visitors were going, state parks versus national parks. As you can see, in January and February, visitation to all of our parks was above the year before. And then April, not so great for either, but then state parks has been the visitation at state parks has been record setting this year. It's been very healthy. National parks finally started catching back up and getting more positive in the fall. We definitely saw a big surge of visitation September, October, November, and December, the last 4 months in our parks. And Utah's done really well as far as having more kind of outdoor recreation, rural opportunities for travel. Again, Vicki shared this, just kind of putting in perspective that leisure and hospitality was hit hardest of all of our major industry sectors. Private leisure and hospitality jobs, somewhere about down 13% at the end of the year. So kind of picking back up, but still not great. Okay, and I wanted to show this map. This is looking at county transient room tax revenue from January through November. We don't have December yet. And basically the gray is showing negative year over year revenue amounts. And you can just see how gray our map is this year. Usually it's pretty red and pink. And I just wanted to say that take this with a grain of salt. Even though you might say that, oh, Morgan County was 40% over last year, or Rich was 35, it's still not a ton of actual revenue. So as far as the revenue increases, Summit, Rich, and Daggett, those 3 counties made up 96% of any kind of transient room tax revenue increase in 2020. Summit mostly Summit. They had a very good September, I think, October, November. And then as far as the revenue losses, you can see the little top 10 list. Salt Lake County, Grand, and Utah make up 3/4 of all of the transient room tax losses. So those were the big 3 that were hit pretty hard. I mean, we know Salt Lake and the Wasatch Front was hit pretty hard, relatively speaking, with the lack of business travel and people avoiding city travel and urban travel. And this was a look at all of our accommodation sales from the tax revenue, or from the tax commission. And in 2020, there's some estimates of where we're going to fall. Somewhere between, I think tax revenue as a whole will be down 30 to 40% in 2020. I'm not, that's kind of my best guess at this point. And though even though we've seen kind of this fall winter surge in some of our tourism dependent counties, this is a look at I don't know if you can see it. Anyway, it's a look at the ADR, which average daily hotel room rates over in 2020 were down like somewhere between like 8-13% in some of our main tourism counties. So even though you might have more people coming, it may not produce as much revenue based on the lower rates that we're seeing now because of COVID. So I'm just going to point that out. And that's it. That's just a little preview of what's in the trifold. Also, the 2019 county profiles are done and they will be posted to our website. They might be there right now, but they should be on our website for you to check those out. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Jennifer before we move on? I'm looking if you want to raise your hand or you can just unmute yourself and ask. Okay, well, as always, Jennifer, that was great information. I can't tell you how valuable it has been year over year for us as we communicate even at a local level with what's happening. So thank you for all of your efforts and researching, compiling, distributing all of it. So thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Des, you're up with our legislative update.
Morning, everyone. I'm not at the Capitol. They've got their final appropriation meetings this morning, so I'm sitting in my office like all of you are at home. I'll be up there later this afternoon. I want to go through a number of the a number of the bills, and I know a lot of folks want to talk about what's going on with TRT. I'm going to try and maybe be the glass half full part of it, and then we'll go towards the discussion on TRT towards the second half of my discussion. So I wanted to talk about a few of the things that are glass half full. So first of all, Vicki reported on TMPF, and in our weekly reports, we've stated that TMPF currently has in the budget almost $22.83 million appropriated for it. Now that is in the base budget bill. That is not a guarantee that that's where it ends up. So while it's really comforting to have that have been in the base budget bill and a direct signal, this weekend is when the legislative leadership will get their new budget or their new revenue estimates and projections for next year, and then weigh that against all the other things that is competing for dollars. And so those budget amounts that were previously approved can always be adjusted in later budget bills that then would happen the end of the year. And in some years, we've seen additional dollars added, and in some years, for oftentimes economic factors, we've seen some reductions towards the end of a legislative session. So just it's a high profile monitor for all of us, and hoping that we can continue with the trajectory that we're on there with Tourism Marketing Performance Fund. I want to add on a little bit about the possible highly impacted business and nonprofit organization grant program that GOED is working on, and Senator Cullimore. That is really going to be, I think, in large part contingent upon what goes on with budget revenue projections. So as we go into this weekend and into next week, as they start seeing really where their revenue forecasts are, that's going to have a cascading effect over on all the things that they have to do that they've already committed to doing, and then what the dollars are remaining in the surplus that they projected prior to the session starting. And so the dollar amount, while there have been some pretty large dollar amounts thrown out there by some of the organizations that have been heavily impacted and industries, like over, recommendations of over $300 million to go towards this heavily impacted industry grant program, the legislature doesn't have $300 million to put towards that. I just want to temper people's understanding and kind of where that's going to go. I think we'd be, talking about in the 10, maybe $20 million in highly impacted. Maybe there could be more there, but I'm just trying to temper expectations that it isn't going to be hundreds of millions of dollars that they're going to have available, and it will go to the most heavily impacted businesses and organizations that would be able to demonstrate that their year-over-year business had been impacted by 90% in the first round, and then the second round would go towards you'd be negatively impacted year-over-year in an 80% formula. But it's going to go towards the businesses that can demonstrate that they were the most highly impacted year-over-year. So if you have thoughts or businesses or members or folks in your communities that you believe hit that criteria, having them think that through on what their application may look like or their justification for being highly, more highly impacted than some other businesses. It's a great opportunity, I think, over the course of the next week for folks to be thinking, how would they phrase that in their application and getting their financials in place to be able to make that case if this new grant program does get funded and created. Related with that, I think probably most of you have seen some of the discussion about PPP loans and how the state is going to treat the forgivable portion of the PPP loans that many in our industry received and then transitioned into a grant once they demonstrated that they used it for payroll during that time period or costs associated with COVID. So the federal government basically at the end of the year said, as far as federal income tax, businesses sort of get what I would phrase as a double dip. They get to both use the business expenses as deductible expenses, and then also say that anything you got with PPP is not taxable. So at the state level, this has created some stir at the beginning of the session because the state didn't have clarity on exactly how they were going to treat the PPP loans, particularly the free money, the grant free dollars that came through. So think of it from the perspective of if you got a PPP loan or your business has got a PPP loan, and they used half of it for deductible expenses to pay your employees and other costs, but they had 50% of it remaining, and that turns into a loan and it wasn't forgiven. The 50% that you used as deductible expenses in Utah is going to be allowed to be a deductible business expense. But if that other 50% that you have on your books and you took it as, and you show it on your books as income, then that would be taxable. If you show a profit at the end of your year, just like in any given year, that would make your business profitable. You'd pay state income tax on the profit that you show on your books. I say that because those businesses, if it is going to be a loan, right, and sit on your books, the businesses need to make sure that it's designated on their books as a loan and not as income. As a loan, it shows on your balance sheet as debt. It doesn't show as income. So in theory, there's a way to make sure that you avoid it. If you didn't use it 100% for paying out on payroll and other expenses due to COVID. And if some businesses took it as a loan, kind of for protection for later in the year to say this is cheap money to be able to get the loan, then they just need to make sure that that's showing on their books as a loan on their balance sheet, which does not become an income tax, just like any other loan you would get if you went to the bank. So I know it's a little bit confusing, but we're trying to bring some clarity to that. I believe that's the direction that the state of Utah and legislative leadership is going, that, hey, we're not going to give you a pass if your business shows a profit. You're still going to pay corporate income tax if your business is profitable. All right, so Vicki mentioned the outdoor recreation possible grant fund, and certainly the governor called out a recommendation for $100 million, and there's a lot of support in the legislature for outdoor recreation, major infrastructure between partnering with communities and state parks of increasing outdoor recreation assets as a interfaces then with the Red Emerald strategy and distributing visitors and recreation to other parts of the state. That's all going to be contingent upon how much money they have left over this after this weekend, and start figuring out the budgets and really how much surplus they're projecting and how much they may put in to cash into some projects, and then whether or not there's some projects that would be bonded for. As a side note with all of that, there is a serious discussion about what the state may do with some capital investment, long-term infrastructure investment for in Salt Lake County for the Cottonwood Canyons on transportation fixes for the congestion in the Cottonwood Canyons. And there are 3 alternatives that are currently in play with UDOT and EISs and evaluations as to which direction a recommendation UDOT may recommend, whether or not it's a added lane and bus rapid transit, whether or not it's a cog rail, or whether or not it's a gondola. So just keep in mind that those are also in significant play as it relates with the visitor economy and experiences with some of those key ski areas. There are a couple of bills that I'll just mention really briefly that I sort of, one that's not that big of a, I don't think that big of a deal, but it sparked my memory as I was listening to Vicky and Dark Sky. I believe there is a bill filed by Representative Handy in Davis County that creates a new state license plate that would be a dark sky license plate to go along with the other offerings in the state. So it's just mostly an FYI. It doesn't take away anybody else's license plate, but he does have this license plate bill that's out there. And then this last few days, there is bill file Senate Bill 168 called Designated Vehicle Routes by Senator Mike McKell. And this is really coming from Moab City and the mayor of Moab trying to get some help to allow cities that are a resort community, that are designated as a resort city, to be able to restrict off-road vehicles on city controlled streets. The bill currently reads after 8 p.m. and before 8 a.m. As many of you that have been in Moab, a lot of ATV, UTV usage and a lot of noise that's occurring at night and causing problems in their residential neighborhoods as well as around the hotels. And so it's their attempt of trying to get some help on being able to put some parameters, put some control into when and how ATV, UTVs are utilized. That comes with some, that's an observation piece. I understand what they're doing. That's going to come with some interesting reaction by the ATV, UTV crowd and some of the legislators that are heavily involved with that. The lobbyists pushing that for Moab City is also representing Grand County on the transient room tax issues. So I guess jump into transient room tax. There are 3 known bills that I know of. One of them is public, and that's HB 247, and that's the one that was in Revenue and Taxation Committee last week. UTIA ended up with a neutral position on the bill. There's some positive parts of the bill and some things that are still challenging to some of our members, and some of our members find some positive aspects to the overall bill and the direction that the bill is going towards. Just as an FYI, the Hotel and Lodging Association and many direct hoteliers in that area are not supportive of the bill. Let me explain to you some of the things that are going on in HB 247. First of all, it was created by Representative Carl Albrecht, who is from the Richfield area, and it was requested to be created by some of our tourism partners in the rural counties to increase the auditing authority for county clerks and auditors to catch the tax cheats. I mean, this has been something that we as the industry have been unified behind for a number of years. There are a number of hoteliers and around in areas of the state, and we rely on our county DMOs and other businesses and observing kind of what business some of these hoteliers are seeing in their parking lots, and it's not matching up with what some of our county tourism officials and the clerk auditors are seeing what's reported on their sales tax and transit room tax collections and remittance. And so the counties are pushing for greater authority and not relying on only the state tax commission to periodically show up in some of the more remote parts of the state and be able to keep some of the businesses honest. We believe that most of the businesses are honest, but if you think about transit room tax and sales tax as the revenue pie, what we're trying to do is make sure that we're capturing all that and growing the revenue pie for the taxes that are owed and due now, and make sure they're paid on a timely basis, not 3 years later after they've gamed the system and pay after somebody's finally paid attention to it at the state tax commission. Last year's bill, we added some additional tax commission staff and a focus by the tax commission to do a better job. The counties just feel like even when that occurs, it's just not going to be enough. There needs to be a stronger partnership with county clerk auditors and their commissions to partner with the tax commission and be able to identify when they've got a problem and be a part of the enforcement side of being able to get all of the taxes collected. So that's the positive piece of it. I will tell you that early on, the new governor, Governor Cox, sent a really strong message in his budget remarks, saying that he believes that counties need more flexibility in determining how to best utilize their transient room tax. So we come into this session with a new governor and with years of mainly rural county commissioners really pushing on government closest to the people makes the best decisions. We need flexibility. We want to support our tourism economy, but there are years when we haven't, enough for marketing, and years when they want to shift some dollars towards some visitor impact or some destination development or visitor management type issues. This has been a major discussion among all of you. Those of you that attended the UAC conference in St. George, their annual fall conference in St. George, the UAC, Utah Association of Counties, created a tourism affiliate group within UAC, and there was a major meeting and discussion saying, as we work towards the Red Emerald strategy at a state level, and we work on a more sophisticated model that isn't only marketing and isn't only mitigating, there is a lot of ground in between to improve the visitor economy that is destination development and visitor management, creating a positive experience for both visitors and as well as for residents. And so there's been this multi-year layer of legislators continuing and legislative leadership to continue hearing this messaging, as well as from the new governor. And Representative Albrecht then added some specific language that he was asked to, Moab is in Grand County is in his district, and he was asked to add some specific language to this to give, their purpose was to give, in particular, Grand County some immediate flexibility. Some of the other counties that have 2 national parks, if they meet a population threshold at 9,000 people at some time in the future, of residents at some time in the future, could qualify for these this same level of flexibility. But it gives them an additional flexibility in how Grand County can utilize their transit room tax in what they're terming economic diversification. Now, we think that economic diversification is too broad and it needs to be tied back to the visitor economy. And we have continued to message that we think that ought to be tightened up. But as UTIA, we've taken a neutral position on that bill for the long-term view of, we need to get back to this destination development, visitor management, work with UAC and the state on how we're, let us get out of COVID, let us get recovered, and then let us be looking at what the next more sophisticated model in the partnership between what the state is doing, what outdoor recreation is doing, and what local tourism offices and private sector are all doing in combination with each other. So I know that's a mouthful. Natalie, do you want to add anything to that? You've been as deep into this, if not deeper, than I have with kind of figuring out where to go with this bill.
I would just say the only thing to add is just that really with our commitment on going neutral, we discussed doing a lot of work during the 2021 interim session, which is this upcoming spring, fall, winter, so that we can come prepared in 2022 to not keep coming to the table in this type of argument, battle, whatever we want to call it. But to come instead to the table with solutions and to a resolution. And ultimately what that will entail is a collaborative workforce between everyone within the UTIA membership and within the industry and within our partnering industries as well. So that's just something to look forward to in these upcoming months. And what we'll be doing with the organization is really bringing together all of our partners on a regional level to have these discussions.
Which is really what we committed to in 2019 verbally. And I think that we would have been further along in that had we not had COVID. And everyone here on this call and in the industry would have been spending time, but we all reeled back into survival mode and weren't thinking, okay, where do we need to go in the next 2 to 5 years or 10 years in this industry in the state? So we made a recommitment. I will tell you that I've had legislators kind of look at me cross-eyed, and I have been actually in person with them with masks on, so that eyes become more apparent in their body language reactions. Of, man, I get that you guys are all hurting, but we're going to put a lot of money into promotion. We've done so much to put into promotion. And they're just looking at us like, you got to come to the table with some proactive partnership on this. And that's, I think, in large part where we've felt like this bill may have some changes and tweaks that are needed still going forward. And I think we're willing to be very actively engaged and make sure that we help maybe narrow this down a little bit further and have it tied closer back to the visitor economy. But once when it was in committee, that was where we felt like we needed to be, as being seen by many of the significant members of the legislature, seeing us as being a partner and not obstructionist. So should we ask if there's questions on any of that before I mean, I've got 2 other transit room tax bills that sort of interplay with this. I don't know if everybody wants to go into those first, Natalie, or if we ought to just take questions on the Albrecht bill.
Maybe pause and take some questions because there are so many layers in that piece of the bill.
Yeah, it's confusing.
So I don't see any hands raised, but if you have a question, if you want to raise your hand in the chat.
I will say this, there are the Moab Chamber of Commerce, Natalie, if I'm getting this right, they ended up in a neutral position. There are a number of specific businesses, a number of hoteliers in Moab that don't like this bill and are opposed. And Utah Hotel and Lodging Association is trying to negotiate some changes on that, specifically for those hotelier members. I think legislative leadership and Representative Albrecht are a little bit frustrated that UTIA just can't speak for everybody, but we've been very clear with them. This has some very direct impacts, and we can't tell any of those members that it specifically impacts or what their relationship is with their county council or their county administrator. And it doesn't prevent the Grand County from using as much money as of the transit room tax as the county has collected. They could use all of it on promotion if they chose to. It's just reducing down the floor of what they have to spend on tourism marketing. And that is troubling if you're the hotelier. And yet the legislature is looking at they're telling me they're looking at tax receipts and saying that the tax receipts in that community on the hotels are doing fine. I've argued this is for not this year. We're not making changes as it relates, and that's really not looking at what this year is. We've got to look at how do we climb out of this and how do we make sure that we have a really strong, robust right messaging to the right type of visitors, that it's going to take more money to go after a higher dollar spend, longer stayer, European, East Coast, Texan, Californian, whoever, to say, let's get that ADR back up and let's get the RevPAR back up for the hoteliers and the communities. And we're only going to do that through smart marketing. And it isn't necessarily about quantity, it's about quality and the dollar spend, and how that then interplays around the state with our overall initiative of trying to get the dollar spend up. So that's the kind of the narrative that I'm having with overall legislators, and kind of where we are in the position that we're in.
So Des, there haven't been any hands that have popped up. So if you want to continue with the other two, and then
okay,
if anyone has any questions, just raise your hand and then I'll call on you at the end.
Okay, there are two other bills. They're bill requests. So Representative Lowry Snow in Washington County was asked by the Washington County Sheriff to be able to utilize some of the, if you remember, we've got in transient room tax, we've got the marketing dollars part of transient room tax, and then we've got the infrastructure dollars. So in rural counties, 53% of transit room tax can be used on the infrastructure related costs and mitigating impacts. In urban counties, first through third class, they don't have the ability to go use that 2.25% that you can use for infrastructure. Urban counties are not allowed to use that for EMS, search and rescue, kind of the tourism impact side, because at the time we negotiated that 15 years ago, the urban counties had a broad, diverse tax base in order to be able to cover some of the visitor impacts, and the rural counties didn't. And so they made those arguments. Well, Washington County, 2 years ago, in a Representative Brad Last bill, who is the appropriations chairman in the House, and from Washington County, asked for a little bit of flexibility on Washington County being able to use some of the infrastructure portion of money, not the promotion side, to go over help with some EMS needs over in Springdale, Rockville, Hurricane area, because of EMS cost tied with increased visitation at Zion National Park. And so we worked with them and created a narrow definition to allow that to happen. Well, the Washington County Sheriff is asking now Representative Lowry Snow to expand that slightly and allow Washington County to also be able to use some of that TRT for search and rescue costs, as everybody has come into St. George, particularly, and accentuated over this last year. They do have a number of hotel stayers that are going out and adventuring and get lost, and they're making the argument, hey, we want some of that flexibility like the rurals have had, to go use some of, not the promotion side of TRT in Washington County, but the infrastructure side. Now, I will tell you that the conversations I've had with Representative Snow are that, hey, if you're only talking about the infrastructure side, and this is something that is supported by the county commission, and we can limit down how much that is, so you can't just go use all of it over on search and rescue, then we're open to that discussion. If it's only going to limit it down to a Washington County only bill because of the uniqueness of Zion National Park. And I know, Kevin's perked up on this and he's been watching this. I've had a conversation with Dean Cox, with Commissioner Cox, Kevin, about this the other night. And I've been talking with Representative Snow, and I think the sheriff and Dean Cox and Lowry Snow are going to get together to say, is this really the time in the year to do this? And is it really needed? And if so, how do we limit it down? And the reason why I say limit it down is because I've got other urban counties that want to open up that TRT infrastructure money, not the promotion money, and give some more flexibility. Utah County in particular, their lobbyist is fishing around to see if Utah County could open up their infrastructure part of TRT to allow for search and rescue and sheriff and some road repair impacts for the canyon usage east of Provo and Orem. My challenge there is it's BYU students and day use visitors that are going up and causing that, not hoteliers in Utah County. But that is part of this discussion. Maybe some of that infrastructure for some of the urban counties does make some sense, but it's got to be at some points, but it's got to be tied back to destination development, visitor management as a holistic piece, not onesie twosie counties all coming in and trying to take a little bit of piece of that. And that's where our strategy has been, is to say, let's look at this holistically. Let's get back to this in a bigger picture. How are we visitor management, destination development across the state, and figure out what those definitions look like, and figure out how all that interplays with the direction that the Utah Office of Tourism, Governor's Office of Economic Development, and Outdoor Recreation are all interplaying. And that doesn't feel comfortable to be trying to do that. Today is midway point in the legislative session to say, let's go figure out how all of that interplays without it feeling like you're attacking the most impacted industry in the state during COVID in the middle of a pandemic. So along those lines, the third bill file that I know of that exists is called Tourism Amendments by Senator Michael Kennedy. He's in Utah County. He used to be a member of the House of Representatives. And when Senator Dan Hemmert left the Senate to be appointed by Governor Cox as the GOED director, now Senator Michael Kennedy won the GOP race in order to be the senator from that district just prior to the legislative session starting. So he has opened this bill file, I believe, to have a placeholder to possibly run a bill that Utah County only, or that Utah County would gain some flexibility on the infrastructure portion of transient room tax that they don't have dedicated towards their conference center or other infrastructure already allowed uses, and be able to use some of that money for some of the impacts up in the canyons. I've been trying to work with their lobbyists to say, this is a really crummy time to do this. Can we have a dialogue with the Utah County Commission about what we're trying to accomplish statewide, and does this really have to happen this year? So I haven't got commitments that they aren't going to continue to push. In fact, I think they will continue to push for an opportunity. And so all of that interplays with the Albrecht bill and trying to find a reasonable path there for a narrow fix as we deal with other messages and threats for other places around the state on how we're going to best use transit room tax in destination development and visitor management, and in a more sophisticated dynamic model interplaying with the Red Emerald strategy. So that is all a mouthful. I guess I know I'll have some questions about alcohol policy along the way too. I will tell you that Representative Hawks, who is the point person, and Senator Jerry Stevenson continue to work on what they are going to decide to allow into, what they are going to put in their bills. Caitlin and some of our other friends are in a working group with Representative Hawks, trying to influence what they're willing to put in the bill. Ultimately, it's their decision what they want to put in their bill or not in the bill, and we should start seeing over the next few days what they as the sponsors have decided to include in a bill. Some of it's DABC cleanup stuff, some of it's industry, some of it's restaurant, some of it's hotel. There are a lot of different requests in with that, and I wish I had more detail on it as to what's in and what's out today. Where you're just going to have to we're just going to have to circle back. It'll probably start coming together more towards the end of more into next week, second half of next week.
Thanks, Des. I'm still keeping an eye out and I don't see any hands. So does anybody have a question for Des? You want to just go ahead and unmute yourself if you do?
People with their cameras on, I didn't put anybody to sleep. The ones that don't, I probably put to sleep.
Well, I know that, it's funny you tacked alcohol policy on there at the end, because I know every week when I have my chamber legislative affairs meetings, they say, okay, Sarah, what's new on alcohol. So it's always lingering.
I will tell you that there were over 60 items that were requested for the legislators to put in this from restaurants, retailers, beer wholesalers, convenience stores, bars. I mean, just there, DABC, DUI and overconsumption, and public safety folks. I mean, there's a lot on the list that they're trying to sort through. Okay, what really works its way into this bill, and 60 items on there gets super confusing. So the devil's going to be in the details to what actually ends up coming out, and we're going to have to, react to what ends up getting posted.
With a very quick review turnaround, it sounds like. So, okay, well, I still don't see any hands, so you just must have go through. Go ahead, Natalie.
Kevin's hand is raised.
Oh, thanks.
Wait, I'm here. No, I just thought I'd chime in with a little update for Des and Natalie. I did speak to the two other commissioners this week as well. They seem to be fairly neutral on the bill. They understand the Lowry Snow bill. They understand the timing might not be the best for it, and they don't want to disrupt the apple cart, but they do have concerns certainly about that. I also got a call last night from the head of our search and rescue organization with some significant concerns, and he's the one who sort of introduced Lowry to the concern there. So I think our search and rescue teams right now, they're currently all volunteer in this area, and they're getting worn out. And so they're also now starting to look at, well, should we continue to support these events and other things that are going on, some of the big stuff that we have, when we're just worn out. So definitely there's some concern there that we need to find a way to support that. I think 60% of the rescues that they go on are out of the county visitors.
So when I asked Lowry Representative Snow, how much money he was looking at, he came back with about $250,000. And I'm sort of scratching my head as to, if they're volunteers, unless you're going to start paying full-time search and rescue, how does that solve the burnout side of the volunteers? And they've got their own costs that they need to be reimbursed for. So there's a burnout side where they're spending some of their own money to go do this, let alone their own time. But the burnout factor, I will tell you that also, and I don't know if Washington County would qualify for it, there is $6 million it blurs between EMS and search and rescue related stuff, but some of this, they're similar costs, and there is some a rural EMS grant that is embedded in a budget. I'm not sure that Washington will qualify for it or not if it's only 4 through 6 class counties, but I think better understanding, that's where we tried to send the signal to Representative Snow is, can you just go work this out with the commission and the sheriff?
Yeah.
And have us understand how that 250,000 or a small portion of this out of the infrastructure side is actually going to alleviate the problem on the bigger picture of search and rescue folks burning out. Now, I also understand that there is a bill. I haven't seen it. Maybe it's in there, but I also understand that there is a bill that will attempt to provide medical insurance coverage for search and rescue volunteers. Now, that's full medical insurance, and that's going to come at a cost to somebody. I don't know exactly how all that interfaces with this, but in a lot of places saying, well, maybe that's the benefit to people saying I'm going to go volunteers. It's the way I get my medical insurance covered. That's going to come at a cost, either to the state or locally someplace. And anyway, so there's a lot of other moving pieces to this as well. I'm trying to be quite collaborative with Representative Snow on this and saying we're willing to come to the table. Just don't open up Pandora's box on this this year while we figure out all these other moving pieces in 28 other counties.
I think that's a smart position to take, and I think there are some local discussions that could happen. are there other sources of funding to help support the needs there or whatever? And, so anyway, just kind of giving you an update on the discussions I've had. It's definitely a topic of interest. And I'm not sure, again, with the commissioners, the position seems to be kind of neutral. I don't know how anxious they are to dive into it, though.
Yeah, well, just so you know, I met with Representative Snow yesterday. I told him of my conversations with Dean Cox, and he was going to reach out to Commissioner Cox. Just that he doesn't want to go push something if there's not a uniform agreement coming out of Washington County. So anyway,
that's great.
Let me know if you hear something.
Will do.
Okay. Anyone else I missed? Any other questions? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Des, for that very thorough and robust explanation. And I know you're just burning the candle at both ends trying to support our industry. So thank you for all of your efforts and work on our behalf. We really appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we have a couple of minutes left. We'll just open it up. Does anyone have any announcements they would like to make to the group? I don't see any hands or comments. Okay. Well, with that, I just want to thank you all again for taking the time to be here with us today. Please tune in to Vicki's presentation this afternoon, or we will be sending that link out as well. So appreciate all of your time and energy in supporting this amazing state and industry. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Rec, is there a second? Oh, Tara, thank you. Okay, sounds good. Have a wonderful day.